Hi there, this is Chris.
And this is Tony.
And we've decided to come on here because we're a bit concerned with things that are going on in the world today.
Well, I don't think we've experienced anything like what's going on in our lifetimes.
And all I can put it down to is that we're in the end time events that the Bible talks about, and in particular Matthew 24, where Jesus warns us that there will be times, perilous times that come. And his disciples asked, when will these times be? And he gave us some clues. And those clues were, there'll be wars and rumours of wars. There'll be earthquakes. There'll be famines. There'll be pestilence throughout the world. And we believe we're seeing these things take place right before our eyes today. And if you haven't already noticed, then you need to take note, because these things are happening. We don't want to be like ostriches and have our head in the sand. We want to be like watchmen on a wall. And look for these things that are happening. We want to present some stuff to you that you wouldn't otherwise hear, and we want to present it as truth, as it is, and not as conspiracy, as you might otherwise accuse us of.
Oh, but hang on a minute. Shouldn't we just be comfortably sitting in our pews? I mean, aren't we being told that everything's rosy and our best days are yet ahead? What's this? This is some strange teaching, isn't it there, Chris?
Yes, and you no doubt will think that. You'll think it's negative. You'll think that, no, this is not right.
Doom and gloom. We don't want doom and gloom.
No, we don't want that. But we think of the prophets of old, and that's not to say we're prophets here. We're not saying that at all, no. But the prophets of old, they quite often brought a message that was different, and they got scolded for that. Some of them were even stoned, and not with marijuana, but they were scoffed and mocked. And I just want to allude you to another passage of scripture which I think which I go by, and that's from Matthew 24 as well, where Jesus said to his disciples, he said, "Hey, these days will be the days of Noah," and those days were when people were marrying, they were eating, they were being merry, and a time was coming. Noah was warned, and he's given a blueprint actually to build an ark. And God may be saying to us today, here's the blueprint. There's something coming, just as the days of Noah. There was something coming. In those days, they'd never seen rain. But here was Noah building this ark in the middle of nowhere. And as in the days of Noah, I believe something's coming we haven't experienced before, and we need to be ready. Another passage of scripture is the lesson of the 10 virgins. 5 will be ready, and 5 won't.
Yeah, that's pretty sobering.
It is pretty sobering, but I want to be in the camp where we're part of the 5 that are ready. And hopefully we can give you some insight as to what's going on, and hopefully we can allow you to just adjust your thinking a little bit. And be watchful, be open-minded here, and don't put us in a little box here. That's not what we want you to do.
We don't fit in boxes too well there, Chris, do we?
No, we don't. And we just want to put a message out there that we feel you need to hear.
Okay, so Chris, there's just so many things we could touch on. I mean, far out. You got ISIS, you got earthquakes, you got plagues, you got famines, you got bird flus, you got people preparing for nuclear war. You got the elite running to bunkers all over the place. I mean, but we're going to do half hour today to start with. So what subject do you reckon we're going to tackle today there, Chris?
Well, I really want to tackle the local scene. We're too busy tied up in our little daily lives, our busyness, our businesses, our families, and that's great. But we still need to be watchful. As Jesus said, when you see these happening, know that my coming is near.
Yes. Well, so what do you think the first thing that's likely to impact us is? I mean, like I say, far out, man, we could go into 1,000,001 tangents at the moment, but what's the most immediate threat, do you believe, Chris?
Well, I think the main threat for the globe, not just for New Zealand, but it's going to affect us because it's a global thing, and that's the financial crisis. That's almost upon us.
So you think we're heading for a global financial crisis?
I do.
What do you think, the 2008 crisis, or are we talking Great Depression of the 1930s, or are we just some little recession? What's your opinion on that?
Well, the 2008 GFC, they called it, the global financial crisis, is nothing. It's just a walk in the park to what I believe is coming.
A prelude.
It's a prelude. And as far as the Great Depression, this will be called the Greater Depression.
Right.
Now, nobody likes to use the word depression. They keep away from the D word. Just like the other D word, debt. Instead of debt, they call it credit.
Aha. Very subtle, but one sounds much nicer and more palatable than the other, doesn't it?
It does. So when we go to the bank, they want you to receive credit. Credit is no longer a plus in your bank account. Credit is the opposite. It's debt. And they want us to take their credit, which is debt, not credit.
So people really need to get their head around that, isn't it? It's a whole change of terminology. I wonder if that was pretty deliberate, actually, to hoodwink people.
It is. And once again, biblically, if you go back, the whole world's in a mess because we've gone away from our biblical principles. And God says to not have debt, to be the lender.
Man's debtor,
Yeah, be the lender, not the borrower. We've gone away from that. No wonder we're in a mess.
True, yeah.
For generations, we've allowed debt to take over, and we've gone away from biblical principles. We've ignored God in this, and unfortunately, the whole world is in a mess. But this debt is going to come home soon to roost, and hopefully in this half hour we can give you some insight into the imminent financial crisis, and to just make you aware.
Okay, so we're going to try and give people some clues as to what they should do, or are we just going to tell them it's all doom and gloom and there's nothing they can do?
Oh, there's a solution to this. And unfortunately, we're going to go through trials and tribulations. And the word says so. It doesn't say we're going to be all honky-dory. We're going to be all sugar-coated candy. It's not going to be like that. There's some warnings. It says...
So some people are going to be in for a shock then when they find out that that their cruisy little life isn't going to be cutting it.
What we're here to do is just to bring awareness. We want to bring the truth and awareness to what's about to happen. What is happening? Because the mainstream media will certainly not allow you to hear what is actually happening in the world.
Yes, well, the mainstream media seems to be pretty well controlled by the people that run the finances, so they're going to tell you what you want, or what they want you to hear, aren't they?
Yeah, and in particular when it comes to the solutions we believe are viable for this time ahead, that they will tell you opposite.
Right, okay. Sounds good. Let's get into it, Chris.
Let's go. Let's get on this roller coaster and let's get this humming. And hey, people, weigh it up with Scripture as well. Everything we say, if you can't weigh it up with Scripture, then have a look for yourself. Just don't take our word for it. I'd hate to lead you astray. And if there's anything that's not right, please let us know. And if need be, we'll rectify it.
Cool. Let's get into it.
Things are happening. You can't be like an ostrich and stick your head in the sand and say they're not. You can't say that the likes of us are conspiracy theorists, because when it comes to the truth, conspiracy gets thrown out the window.
Well, stuff that you thought was conspiracy 5 years ago is now out there in the open, isn't it?
It is.
So it can't be conspiracy theory anymore. It's more like conspiracy fact, really.
And the fact that we're not doom and gloomers. We're more realists. These things are happening. If you haven't already seen it, start opening your eyes and unblock your ears, because what you're seeing in the media is not necessarily true.
Well, who owns most of the mainstream media? The people that don't want you to know the truth, isn't it? So they're only going to feed you what they find acceptable, what they want you to hear.
Well, that's right, and that's another story in itself. I want to just sort of kick up in a gear here, and what we want to try and put across is the truth. I was talking to an 18-year-old just yesterday, and he said to me, he says, Chris, he said, if you were to give me 1 or 2 tips in the financial realm, what would it be? And I said, well, tip number 1 would be don't put your money in the banks. Don't be a depositor. And of course he asked me why, and I shared with him as to why. And the reason why is, firstly and foremost, is that if you didn't already know it, I think it was not quite 2 years ago, the New Zealand government passed a law in Parliament that said the banks have a right to take your deposit at any time in the unlikely event of a financial crisis. So the bill that was passed, the legislation in it was that any bank that is valued at $1 billion or more in New Zealand, and they all are, would be that they have the right to, in the unlikely event of a financial crisis, to take a percentage of that funding to bail out the banks.
You mean kind of like what happened in Cyprus a couple of years ago?
Exactly, and it was about a month after the Cyprus event that took place that New Zealand took charge of this. So in essence, the open bank resolution is set up to steal our money.
Okay, yeah. Well, Chris, I noticed, something else interesting. I mean, we know that New Zealand has that open bank resolution that was passed, but did you know that back in November 2014 at the G20 summit in Brisbane, they announced basically that bank deposits are just part of commercial bank capital structure, and also that they are far from the most senior portion of that structure, with bank deposits being subjected to a decline in nominal value following a bank failure. So in essence, what that means is the Cyprus template of 2011 will be fully implemented in every major economy and place bank depositors as the primary instrument of the next bailouts when the next crisis occurs. So that's pretty scary stuff.
Most of the other Western countries now have got that in place. In Europe, there's a timeline now. I think it's till the end of July that they're to have this in place as well for their banks. So that in itself says there's something up.
Well, generally, you don't make rules and laws unless you've got a reason for it, do you? So
no, that's right. That's right. Now, coming back to the introduction of this, I suppose I've probably gone ahead of myself a little bit, but coming back to the fact that these things are taking place, it is leading up. I believe we're leading up to a financial crisis ahead, and it's going to take a lot of people by surprise. But it's up to the people like us to get the word out.
So are we just talking a financial crisis for New Zealand, or are we talking a global financial crisis?
This will definitely be global. It will start off in the Northern Hemisphere, but it will hit the Southern Hemisphere pretty quick. It will hit the globe pretty quick. There'll be no corner that is spared.
Any idea where you think it'll begin? I mean, America, Greece, Europe?
There's a number of areas that it could begin. There's a lot of ducks lined up, and it could be any one of these ducks that cause the crisis. Greece could be the one, but as we've already seen, Greece has been an ongoing crisis for months now, and every time they come up with a scenario to fix out their problem, they step in and kick the can down the road a little bit further. But the can only be kicked so far, and sooner or later it'll end up in a cul-de-sac and we'll have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, so maybe somebody is deliberately pushing it down the road until they're ready to let the system crash.
Possibly. As you're alluding to, Tony, there's an engineering behind this.
Yeah. Well, yes, I believe there is. It's not happening by accident. It's a deliberately created crisis.
That's right. Now, coming back to the open bank resolution for us as New Zealand depositors, our bank accounts aren't safe. And we're actually termed, our deposits, we're unsecured creditors now.
Whoa, Chris, I mean, most people wouldn't have a clue about that, would they?
Well, no, they don't.
They think their money's in the bank, so it's their money. But how can you be an unsecured creditor then?
Because after the 2007-2008 crisis, the banks were bailed out by the governments. So it didn't affect us. There's no more money left to bail out. So what they're going to do in the future is a bail in. So in their words, in the unlikely event of a financial crisis, there will be a financial crisis, and you will be the one that's going to bail it out or attempt to bail it out. And when this financial crisis happens, your money will be seized. There'll be a time where you won't be able to withdraw any money out of any account, and we may be in for a bartering type scenario for a period of time until they reset the currencies. And at that time, we may go back, well, I believe we will go back to a gold-backed or partially gold-backed currency.
America took their currency off in 1971 under Nixon. Has New Zealand ever had a gold-backed currency? I don't know.
New Zealand had prior to our decimal currency, we had something. We had silver coins, for example.
Right.
We were backed by the Northern Hemisphere. We were backed by Mother England.
True, yeah.
But New Zealand, no, we don't have any gold in our vault.
Yeah, no, that's not a good position, is it?
Well, no. I believe we're coming into a situation where we've never been before. We've never experienced before. What would New Zealand be like without social welfare? Think of that, because that's what I believe will come.
Mm.
And that in itself can be quite scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
When this event takes place, there'll be a revaluing of our assets. Those with debt may flounder. Those with significant debt will flounder. They will be no more as far as your business if it's highly geared in debt. If your mortgages are highly geared in debt, watch out for what's coming.
Well, the whole global economic system's built on debt, isn't it? I mean, everywhere. It's
and that's a problem. It's a big problem.
It can't go away, can it? I mean, the debt's just too big. That cannot be paid back. It's physically impossible.
No, it cannot be paid back. It would take generations to pay back. And that's the plight we're in. And unfortunately, nobody's asking questions. Or, as I said, we're all like ostriches and we're putting our head in the sand and don't want to hear this stuff. But it's time to hear. Because I believe the time is soon where things are going to change rather quickly. And society as a whole is going to change. Is going to have to change with it. And it's not going to be a happy time. It's definitely going to be a time of survival. Yeah,
well, I mean, the crisis won't start in New Zealand, will it? Like you said, it's going to start in the Northern Hemisphere somewhere. And the US dollar seems to be the thing that everyone's running to at the moment. I'm thinking that's going to be the safe haven. And all other currencies seem to be going down, and the US dollar's going up, Chris. What's going on there?
Well, it comes down to this. There's a war on at the moment. Now, the war is a currency war, and what you're seeing is other currencies outdoing currencies. They all want to devalue their currencies for the sake of their export dollar. And we're seeing a war on that at the moment. The American dollar has strengthened. That's to their export peril, if you like. But the American dollar is standing out, and people are seeing that as a safe haven. But in the long run, it's going to die, because the American dollar's been a kingpin for too long. It was established, as you've already said, in 1971, and the average, the longest running fiat currency, which is a paper currency that is run, is this current one, and on average, the longest one prior to this was 40 years. We're over 40 years now in this cycle, and I believe it's about to die.
So what do people do then? I mean, you were talking about the young fella that you said don't put your money in the bank. So what do you do with your money then?
Well, I've already given you a bit of a clue, and that's to invest in a gold asset or silver. Gold and silver are gonna rule, I believe, for a time in a season that's almost upon us.
Well, what about paper, silver, and gold? Is that safe?
No, the only gold and silver asset you should own should be in your hand, because if it's not in your hand, you don't own it.
Yeah, fair enough. That sounds good. So, I mean, most people wouldn't have a clue where you'd even get it from, you know? I mean, I talk to people that haven't got a clue. They say, oh, you know, and I mean, once upon a time I was like that. I had no idea. To the average person, this is completely foreign concept, isn't it? They think their money's in the bank, it's safe, they have some cash, oh, well, they may as well just sit back and enjoy life, and they can't really see a financial crisis greater than the 2008 crisis. I mean, people have got short memory, haven't they?
Well, yeah, and in essence, what they've really done with the 2008 crisis, it's still there. I mean, it's a bit like putting a elastoplast on an open wound, and that's virtually what's happened here. And then underneath all of that open wound, you've got an infection, and that's taking place. And all I've done is created more debt.
Yeah, it seems crazy. I mean, even like at Greece at the moment, they're trying to negotiate loans to pay back loans. I mean, it's like you're taking on more debt to pay back other debts. It's kind of like robbing Peter to pay Paul, or the left hand robbing the right hand, isn't it? I mean, it's
it's absolutely ludicrous.
How long can a system like that sustain?
And it's setting up for a disaster. I mentioned some ducks lined up. Well, Greece is one of those ducks. Another one is the derivatives market. Now, a lot of listeners aren't going to understand a lot of the terminology that we're talking here, but derivatives are in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. The derivatives market is, in essence, a virtual market, and there's nothing really tangible that backs it. That's another duck. Another duck that's lined up is interest rates. If there's even a 0.1% interest rate increase in the US, then that's going to substantially add to their debt repayments. So they can't afford to have any interest rate increase at this stage. As you're probably already aware, they have 0% interest rates in America. In some places, I think even in Europe, there's negative interest rates. So what that means is if you've got money in the bank, you pay the bank the interest on your money.
Yeah, that's crazy.
A crazy situation. Something I want you to be aware of is that come September, October, there's a lot of talk that this may take place. We don't like to put timing on things. It would be wise to get some protection between now and then, if you like, in case. Y-
So it does make sense that they'll go that way, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, and it's all to do with a new world order.
Yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, well, that's a whole other subject, really, isn't it? We can
There's
see
so
that
much.
enveloping our world as we speak. I mean, it's just like really in your face.
There's
I
so,
don't even think they're hiding it anymore. Really, it's coming, and it's coming rapidly. Just backtracking a little bit though, and playing a devil's advocate here a bit, Chris. I mean, you mentioned gold and silver before. I mean, some people are going to be going, but hang on a second, isn't the price of gold and silver going down? So surely that's a bad place to put your money in it. I mean, they would be thinking because if it's going to go down, how do we know it's not going to keep going down, and they might lose money that way? I mean, I'm sure there'll be many people thinking along those lines, and they're thinking it's a whole new concept. Why would they want to even trust gold and silver?
well, we need to trust gold and silver because gold and silver has been money all along, up until 1971 when Nixon took the American dollar fully off the gold standard and gave them the right to print money. It became the petrodollar. Became the dollar that was really backed by oil. We've seen a slump in the oil price recently. We've seen a lot of confidence go in the US dollar from nations that once.
Yeah, well, with the whole oil thing that went down, but it's on the way back up again. To me, it's just plain as your nose on your face that someone's manipulating the price of the oil for some end, aren't they?
Yeah, but a lot of those oil-backed nations now too have lost confidence in the dollar, and they're putting their money in other things like the yuan.
Yes, or you notice the Chinese and the Russians are buying up gold like nobody's business, while the Western countries seem to be hemorrhaging it out. The countries like Russia and China and Germany too are buying gold. The central banks seem to be on an unprecedented gold buying spree at the moment.
Exactly. And you've got to look. You've mentioned manipulation. If manipulation is there, it's there for a reason. There's a reason why too that they'll tell you that gold is not an attractive investment, or silver for that matter. But gold and silver work in tandem. And if you didn't already know it, gold and silver are money. If you have a look at any chart with foreign currency attached to it, you'll always see gold and silver there. So it is money. It always has been money. It was the form of money prior to this 1971 petrodollar. So that's why I believe it will come back to a gold-backed monetary system, and that's why China and Russia have been buying it up in the last 10 or 12 years, because they see what's coming and they see the value in this tangible asset.
And they perhaps want to be top dog in the New World Order, perhaps too. If the America's going down, a sinking ship with a dollar going down, perhaps there's something in that. There's a vying for places in this New World Order and who's going to actually be at the top of it.
Exactly. And there's a saying out there that said, who owns the gold owns the power.
We're all going to be impacted by it, and so it's time to start thinking about what we as individuals can do to prepare and protect ourselves from what seems to be inevitably coming really fast.
Exactly, and that's what we're about. We want to alert. We want people to tune in and to prepare, because we'd rather you be prepared than not. Another thing that we've got to be wary of too is the fact that they're trying to make cash almost illegal to hold.
Well, I mean, who would have ever thought that they'd try and outlaw cash? I mean, but there's been numerous people coming out lately, the elite and out of the woodwork, basically saying that's what they believe the answer is outlawing cash. I mean, crikey dick. When it gets to that stage, we're really in a police state, aren't we?
Definitely. What else would it be? What else could you term it as? It's socialist police state.
Well, then the government can control and monitor all of your spending. If there's no cash, I mean, they could tell you what you can spend your money on and what you can't, and they could banks could charge you whatever fee they wanted in some electronic currency. If you're tied into that system, there's no escaping. But hopefully it doesn't come to that in a hurry, eh?
Yes, well, it's just interesting as to where it is leading. And as Christians, we know from the book of Revelation where this could well be heading, and that is one world system, a currency where you can only trade with a mark on the forehead or on the
the old 666
arm.
system, eh?
The 666 system is where it's leading.
It's just a matter of how quickly, I suppose.
There's three things that we need to really be aware of and be prepared in. Firstly is our spiritual lives. We need to be right with God through Jesus Christ our Saviour. Secondly, we need to have our food and shelter sorted. We need to have at least 3 to 6 months supply of food available. Not only that, we need other supplies. If we do come through a time of crisis that is chaotic in its substance, then we need to think of ways we need to trade. Therefore, supplies in certain areas we may need to stock up on. A good example could be the essentials, i.e. toilet paper. If we have a whole lot of that, you could use that for trading in the future.
So you mean like a bartering system?
Yeah, it may come to that. So we have to be prepared for that.
So we kind of like hope for the best but prepare for the worst sort of scenario.
That's it, Tony. We have to have that mindset. And then thirdly is our financial status. Not all of us are able to be prepared in that arena. But if you've got something, convert it into silver in particular, and have a physical amount available. That too will be a useful tool when it comes to trading in the future.
Yeah, and especially if the currencies start hyperinflating, it's likely that, do you think the price of gold and silver will always match or better the inflation rate?
Well, in a nutshell, what will happen in this scenario is debt doesn't go away. Debt is transferred. So it'll transfer, I believe, into an asset which is a hard asset, as in gold and silver, and I'm talking about physical gold and silver, not the virtual. There's a whole commentary in that in itself, which we haven't got time for today. But the debt will be transferred, and I believe it'll be transferred into gold, particularly gold and silver, platinum to a certain degree, and also it will transfer into a lot of equities associated with those commodities. So those are the three tools that we need to take note of. The three areas we need to look at. Firstly, our spiritual. Second, our food and shelter. And third, our financial. Hey, thanks for listening, and keep tuned in because there's definitely going to be more episodes for you to tune into. So once again, thank you. Have a great rest of the day, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, and hey, keep looking, keep watchful.